This is my prototype for my wilderness survival game called Together or Alone. The object of the game is to survive the wilderness while collecting the resources and tools needed to survive. Players can choose to either work together and try to make sure everyone survives, or compete with one another and attempt to be the last player standing. As a survival game, players must be sure to maintain their food and water resources at all times. They will also be required to collect various tools, parts, and weapons to ultimately make their great escape. Players win the game by bringing their tools and parts to one of the escape tiles. These escape tiles will have a token placed on them with a random vehicle used to escape from the wilderness. It will be necessary to have specific parts and tools in order to repair this vehicle and escape the game. There are also orange danger tiles spread throughout the map. If a player crosses over onto one of these tiles, they must draw a card from the danger deck. These cards may have various consequences. For example, this card results in a snake bite. When being bitten by a snake, the player will lose any remaining stamina from the current turn and must skip their next turn. The amount of stamina available to each player during their turn is determined by a roll of the die. If they roll a 6, for example, they may now have 6 stamina and move their player piece by 6 positions. However, they may also use the stamina to perform various actions on the board. For example, they may choose to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then use their 6th number, their 6th stamina, to extract this one water resource. This resource will then go into the player's personal pool, and they will be allowed to stay in the game for longer. The same goes for extracting items from tool, part, or weapon tiles. Before beginning the game, players will distribute the various resource tokens to their appropriate tiles on the board. For example, this tile has 1 food resource, so we'll put 1 token here. This tile has 1 water resource, so we'll place a water here. This one has 2 water, so we would put 2 tokens in this position. And likewise, 2 food tokens, and so on. The same goes for all tool tiles, part tiles, and weapon tiles. The escape tiles will also have a random escape token placed on them. Each of these will have a random different vehicle available. All players will begin in the upper right corner of the map on the start tile. Players will each roll the die, and the player with the highest number will go first. That player will then roll the die to see how much stamina they have. In this case, they have 5 stamina, so they would be allowed to move either 5 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or if they already reached the resource, they would be able to use some of their stamina to extract that resource. For example, in their following turn, this player would then be able to use 1 of their stamina to extract this water resource. The player would then take that resource back to their personal stockpile, adding it to the water they have available. Each turn will deplete 1 water and 1 food from their stockpile. If either of these resources reaches 0, the player will lose the game. Now let's say player 2 rolls the die and rolls a 6. They decide to go after these resources down here, including this tool. They can move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. However, their 5th space is now a danger tile, so they must draw a danger card. In this case, they've been attacked by pirates, and if they already have a weapon, they will fight off the pirates successfully, but if they do not have a weapon, they'll be robbed of half their food and water resources. Since this player would not have a weapon yet, they would lose half their resources. However, they can continue with their move and gain access to the tool token. They will collect that tool token, flip it over, and on the opposite side will be a random tool, such as a wrench or a screwdriver, that they may be needed in order to use one of the escape tokens. Once a player reaches one of the escape tokens, they'll be able to use 1 of their stamina to flip it over and see what vehicle is at that location. The game rulebook will describe what tools or parts are needed to repair that vehicle and escape the game. It's up to that player to decide if they wish to reveal what vehicle was found at that location. This leaves other players guessing as to what tools will be needed. Players can, however, choose to cooperate, and if another player has the tool needed to escape, that player can make a trade with them, whether a different tool, weapon, or other resources. If a player reaches a weapon token, they will flip over that token and see what weapon has been gained. This can then be used to attack other players, but if that player also has a weapon, they may defend themselves and possibly even kill the attacker. If one player manages to kill another, that player will gain all the resources that player had. Ultimately, the first player or group of players to escape from the wilderness will win the game. Alternatively, if all other players die during the game, the last player standing will win the game by default.